If you'd told me 10 years ago that my own daughter-in-law would one day call me dead weight, I wouldn't have believed you. Not my Emily, not the bright, polite girl who used to help me bake pies on Sunday afternoons, who called me Mom before she ever married my son. But time has a strange way of turning gentle hearts bitter, or maybe it just reveals what's been hiding beneath the smile all along. My name's Margaret Hall, though most folks in town still call me Maggie. I've lived in Willow Creek, a quiet little town in northern Georgia, nearly all my life, the kind of place where people still wave from their porches and where the grocery clerk knows your dog's name. Life here used to be simple, until the world and my family started changing faster than I could keep up. My mornings began the same way for 30 years. Coffee pot bubbling, radio humming old country songs, sunlight spilling through lace curtains. I'd feed the sparrows by the porch rail, talk to them like they were old friends. After my husband Frank passed, those little rituals became my way of staying sane. Grief has its own language, and sometimes it sounds like a tea kettle whistling on an empty stove. When my son Michael and his wife Emily moved back into town 5 years ago, it felt like life had given me a second chance at family. They'd been living in Atlanta, chasing big jobs, big houses, and bigger bills. When they told me they wanted to come home to raise their baby, my heart swelled with hope. "Of course you can stay here," I'd said without hesitation. The old farmhouse was too big for just me anyway. Those first few months were a joy. The sound of a baby crying at night, the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings, it made the house feel alive again. I'd rock little Lily to sleep while Emily caught up on rest. I didn't mind. Those moments filled the quiet spaces that grief had left behind. Michael was working long hours at the construction company, and Emily had taken a part-time job at the library. I was happy to help around the house, cooking, cleaning, watching Lily. It wasn't about being needed. It was about belonging again. Emily would sometimes hug me and say, "Maggie, I don't know what we'd do without you." And I believed her. I believed we were a family built on love, not convenience. But sometimes, love has cracks you don't see until it rains. It started small. Emily would sigh when I offered to fold laundry. She'd quietly redo things I'd already done. "You don't have to worry about that," she'd say with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I brushed it off. Maybe she just wanted to handle things her way. She was young, modern, used to doing things differently. Then came the little corrections. "Lily doesn't need that much sugar in her oatmeal, Maggie." Or, "I read an article that says rocking babies, too long can make them clingy." I'd just nod, biting back my words. It wasn't worth arguing over oatmeal or lullabies, but each small moment left a splinter in my heart. I'd stand in the kitchen sometimes, looking at my reflection in the window, the lines on my face deeper, my hands slower. Maybe I was old-fashioned. Maybe Emily was right. One afternoon while I was sweeping the porch, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice carried through the open window. "She means well, but she's just extra. Dead weight, really. I feel like I have to take care of her sometimes." The broom slipped from my hand. Dead weight. The words hit me like a slap. I wanted to believe I'd misheard, but her tone made it clear. She wasn't joking. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wooden boards beneath my feet, wondering when I'd gone from being family to being a burden. That night, dinner felt colder than usual. Michael was distracted, scrolling through his phone. Emily talked about her new fitness routine. I tried to ask about Lily's upcoming preschool visit, but Emily cut in. "We've got that handled, Maggie. Don't worry yourself." Her words were polite, but her tone dismissive. Michael didn't notice. Or maybe he chose not to. After dinner, I took my plate to the sink and stood there washing, pretending the soap bubbles were more interesting than the ache in my chest. In my room, I sat by the window and watched the fireflies dance in the yard, the same yard where Michael used to chase them when he was little. I whispered into the night, "Frank, what did I do wrong?" There was no answer, of course, just the hum of crickets and the faint laughter of Emily putting Lily to bed down the hall. The breaking point came on a Sunday. Church service had just ended, and the pastor spoke about kindness beginning at home. I smiled politely, shaking hands, pretending everything was fine. Back home, I made roast chicken, Michael's favorite since childhood. I spent hours seasoning it just right, even made apple pie for dessert. When I set the table, Emily came downstairs, glanced at the meal, and sighed. "Maggie, you don't need to keep cooking big meals. It's too much." "Too much?" I asked softly. "It's Sunday dinner, honey." She shrugged. "We were going to order Thai. You didn't have to go through all that trouble." All that trouble. Michael looked caught in the middle, mumbling, "We can have your food another time, Mom." The words stung more than they should have. I'd spent all morning trying to make something special, something that used to mean home. So I quietly took off my apron, folded it, and walked to my room. It rained hard that night. Thunder shaking the windows, wind howling through the trees. I couldn't sleep. My heart felt heavier than the storm clouds above. From down the hall, I could hear Emily's voice again, softer this time, arguing with Michael. "Your mom doesn't get it, Mike. She's not helping. She's holding us back." "Emily, she's just trying to—" "No, we need space. She's dead weight and you know it." My breath caught. Hearing it twice didn't make it easier. I pressed my hand to my chest, whispering, "Lord, give me strength." By morning, I'd made up my mind. Sometimes love means staying, but sometimes love means letting go before you're pushed away. I packed a small suitcase, just clothes, my Bible, and a photo of Frank holding baby Michael. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for letting me be part of your home. I love you all very much. Please don't worry. I'll be fine." Then I walked out the front door and into the rising sun. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I made my way down the long driveway. The air smelled of rain and regret. I didn't know where I was going, only that it had to be away. When you leave the house you built your whole life around, silence follows you like a stray dog. It doesn't bark, it doesn't bite, it just stays. And every now and then, it looks at you with those sad eyes that seem to ask, "Are you sure?" That first week away from Michael's house felt like walking through fog. I didn't know what came next. I'd packed only enough to fill a single suitcase, but the heavier thing I carried was invisible, the ache of being unwanted. Old Mrs. Whitmore from church offered me a small cottage behind her property. It used to be her late sister's place. Dusty, cramped, but it had a little porch that caught the morning sun just right. "You can stay as long as you need, Maggie," she'd said, patting my hand. "No rent, just keep the place company." That's how kindness works in Willow Creek. Quiet and without conditions. I spent the first few days cleaning, not because I needed to, but because cleaning gave my hands something to do, while my heart tried to figure out what had just happened. The cottage smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me I was starting over. I made coffee every morning and sat by the window, watching the world move on without me. The town square was just a short walk away. The bakery, the post office, the thrift store where time seemed to stand still. Sometimes I'd walk by the playground and see mothers pushing strollers, laughing. I'd smile politely and keep walking. It wasn't jealousy, it was memory. I thought about Lily, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, her sleepy giggle when I sang her lullabies. Did she ask where Grandma went? Did Emily tell her I'd just gone away for a while? Some mornings I'd catch myself setting out 2 cups, one for me, one for Frank. Grief and habit share the same chair, I think. To keep my mind steady, I started writing in a small leather journal Frank had once given me. At the top of the first page I wrote, "Day 1 without them." Every day I'd write something new. Some days it was a prayer, some days it was a memory, and some days it was just one word, why. A week passed, then 2, no call, no message. I kept waiting, telling myself he was busy. Maybe he didn't even know I'd left. Maybe Emily had hidden the note. But deep down, I knew my son. Silence was his way of avoiding guilt. When Michael was little, he'd break a vase, hide the pieces, and pretend it never happened, hoping time would fix what honesty couldn't. This felt the same. It was around the 3rd week when my phone finally rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. My heart raced, hands trembling as I answered. "Mom? Hey, it's me." His voice sounded uncertain, cautious. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly. "How's Lily?" There was a pause. "She's good. Emily's been busy. We've all been busy." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "That's good. You sound tired." "Yeah, work's been rough. I heard you found a place?" "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore's cottage. It's small, but cozy." "You didn't have to leave like that, Mom." "Didn't I?" I asked gently. "Sometimes leaving is the only way to make people see you were ever there." There was silence again, the kind that says everything words can't. Finally, he sighed. "Emily didn't mean what she said. She was stressed. We both were." "I know, Michael. She wants to apologize." "Does she?" "Not yet, but she will." I smiled again, this time sadly. "Tell her I don't need an apology, son. I just need you both to be happy." "We miss you, Mom." "Do you?" I asked softly. "Or do you miss what I did for you?" He didn't answer. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the phone. Love doesn't stop when someone hurts you. It just changes shape. Sometimes it becomes quiet, patient, waiting at the edge of hope. Life at the cottage became its own kind of rhythm. I started volunteering at the church food pantry. Mrs. Whitmore would bake peach cobbler, and we'd deliver it to the nursing home. I learned that peace isn't loud. It doesn't need to be announced. It just hums quietly in the background, like a familiar song. But no matter how busy I stayed, part of me still checked my phone every evening, hoping to see a picture of Lily. It never came. What I didn't know then, what I'd only learn later, was that things weren't peaceful back at the house either. Emily had started losing sleep. Guilt can be an echo. It bounces around in the quiet, growing louder when you try to ignore it. One night, after putting Lily to bed, she found the note I'd left tucked inside an old cookbook, the one with my chicken pot pie recipe. Michael told me later she cried when she read it. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was realizing that kindness taken for granted always leaves a hole when it's gone. It was mid-October when a storm rolled through Willow Creek. Thunder shook the sky, lightning flashed through the windows. The power went out across half the town, including my little cottage. I lit a few candles and sat by the window, watching the rain. Funny how storms sound different when you're alone. Louder somehow, almost personal. That night, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, there stood Tommy Jenkins, one of the local boys who helped at the food pantry. "Miss Maggie, you all right? Power's out everywhere. We're checking on folks." "I'm fine, dear. Got candles and company." "Though the company doesn't talk much," I said, nodding toward the empty chair. He grinned. "You sure you don't need anything?" "I'm sure. But thank you, Tommy." He left, and I sat back down, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. Maybe it was the candlelight, or maybe it was remembering that kindness still existed in the world. A few days after the storm, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a short note. "Maggie, I've been meaning to write. I know what I said was wrong, cruel even. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know I'm sorry. You were never dead weight. You were the heart of this home, and I was too proud to admit it. Emily." I read that letter 3 times before setting it down. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt sadness. Because apologies don't always erase the damage, they just acknowledge the wound. Still, something in me softened. Maybe people don't change overnight, but the moment they recognize their mistake, a seed is planted. A week later, there was another knock. When I opened the door, there stood Michael, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and wearing that same sheepish grin he had as a boy when he'd done something wrong. "Hi, Mom." "You didn't have to bring flowers," I said, stepping aside. "They're from Lily," he said quickly. "She picked them." "Did she now?" I smiled, my heart melting a little. He looked around the cottage, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's nice, cozy. It's peace," I replied softly. He nodded, eyes glassy. "Emily wanted to come, but she thought maybe she should give you space." "That's probably wise," I said, though my voice trembled. "She's been different lately. Quieter. I think she misses you more than she'll admit." "We all make mistakes, Michael. The trick is not letting them define us." He smiled faintly. "You always know what to say." "That's because I've had to say a lot of hard things to myself lately." We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Outside, the leaves were turning gold and red, autumn whispering change into everything. Before he left, Michael hugged me tightly. It was the kind of hug that says I'm sorry without words. "Tell Lily I love her," I whispered. "She knows. She asks about you every night." That night, I wrote in my journal again. Day 41. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without letting it poison you. I realized then that love isn't about being needed. It's about being remembered, respected, and cherished even when you're not around. As autumn deepened, so did my peace. I tended a little garden behind the cottage, tomatoes, mint, and wildflowers. Mrs. Whitmore said she hadn't seen me smile so much in years. Sometimes healing doesn't look like grand gestures. It looks like watering plants, baking bread, or humming a tune to no one in particular. But I also knew, somewhere out there, Emily's world was beginning to crumble in quiet ways she hadn't expected, and though I didn't know it yet, soon she would be the one knocking at my door. I used to believe that when people hurt you, time would take care of the rest, like rain washing dirt off a porch. But sometimes time doesn't heal, it just makes you quieter. It had been nearly 3 months since I left Michael's house. The leaves had fallen, the air had turned crisp, and life in my little cottage had found its rhythm, slow, simple, but peaceful. Yet peace can be a lonely thing when your heart still listens for footsteps that never come. Every morning, I'd light a candle by the kitchen window just as the sun rose over Willow Creek. I'd make coffee, whisper a prayer, and write a few words in my journal. Sometimes it was just gratitude. Day 78. The sky looked like a watercolor painting today. And sometimes the words felt heavier. Day 79. I miss Lily's laughter echoing down the hallway. Life, I'd learned, doesn't stop just because your heart breaks. It keeps moving, waiting for you to catch up. Mrs. Whitmore would visit sometimes, bringing fresh pie and local gossip. She'd say, "Maggie, that girl of yours will come round soon. Folks like her, they gotta fall a little before they look up." I'd smile and say, "Maybe so." But deep down, I wondered if Emily would ever look up at all. What I didn't know was that the cracks in Emily's perfect picture were beginning to show. The house that once felt full now seemed too big. The laughter had faded, replaced by tension, the kind you could feel even before a word was spoken. Michael had been offered a new position, one that required longer hours and more travel. He was hardly home. Lily, now 4, had started acting out in preschool, crying for Grandma Maggie, refusing to nap without the lullaby I used to sing. And Emily, well, Emily was tired of holding up appearances, tired of the endless to-do lists, tired of realizing that maybe she'd been wrong. The library had cut hours, and Emily's part-time job wasn't enough to cover everything. Bills started piling up on the counter. The old dishwasher broke. Then the heater sputtered out. In the past, I would have quietly handled all that, baked something warm, made phone calls, fixed what I could, but I wasn't there anymore. Michael tried to help when he could, but he was stretched thin. And when he wasn't working, the tension between them filled the house like static before a storm. "You don't understand what it's like being here alone all day," Emily snapped one evening. "I'm doing this for us," Michael replied. "You're doing it for yourself," she whispered. He didn't answer. That silence was familiar, the same silence that had once stood between me and my own husband years ago. Around that same time, my phone started ringing again. Numbers I didn't recognize. Once, twice, then nothing. Finally, one afternoon I picked up. "Hello?" Silence for a moment, then a small voice. "Grandma?" It was Lily. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice trembling. "How did you get this number?" Mommy was on the phone and I remembered. "You're such a smart girl. How are you?" "I miss you. My dolly misses you too." My eyes filled with tears. "I miss you both very much." "When are you coming home?" I hesitated. "I don't know yet, darling, but I'm always with you in your heart." I could hear Emily's voice in the background, surprised, maybe even panicked. "Lily, who are you talking to?" Then the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, phone still in hand, staring at nothing. That night, rain tapped against the window again, like it always seemed to when life felt too heavy. I lit a candle and opened my journal. Day 93. Sometimes I think forgiveness isn't about waiting for an apology. It's about not letting bitterness take root. I thought about Emily, how I'd once seen her as the daughter I never had, how she'd laughed the first time she tried to make biscuits with me, covered head to toe in flour. It was hard to believe that same girl could call me dead weight. But maybe hurt people don't mean to hurt others. Maybe they just don't know any other way to feel powerful. It was early December when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, hesitant, like someone unsure if they should even be there. When I opened the door, I found Pastor Jim from church standing on the porch, hat in hand. "Morning, Maggie," he said. "Morning, Pastor. Everything all right?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I ran into Michael the other day. He mentioned things have been hard at home." I nodded. "Yes, I heard." He also mentioned Emily hasn't been well. Overworked, anxious. Seems she's been carrying more than she can handle. I stayed quiet. "Sometimes," he continued gently, "grace means stepping in even when we weren't invited." I looked down at my hands, worn, wrinkled, but still capable. Maybe grace is waiting for someone to ask. He smiled softly. "You always had the Lord's patience. Sometimes I think He lends it to me only because He knows I'll need it." We both laughed quietly. After he left, I sat by the window again. But this time, my thoughts weren't about what I'd lost. They were about what might still be saved. As Christmas neared, Willow Creek came alive. Lights twinkled in shop windows. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Choirs practiced carols in the church hall. But in my cottage, things were quieter. I baked cookies for the neighborhood children, knitted scarves for the food pantry, but my heart felt the emptiness of missing family. One evening, I passed by the town square and saw Michael and Emily with Lily standing near the big Christmas tree. They looked like a picture, but not a happy one. Emily's smile was forced. Michael looked exhausted. I stayed in the shadows, watching, unseen. Lily tugged on Emily's coat and whispered something. Emily turned around, scanning the crowd. Maybe she thought she'd seen me. For a moment, our eyes almost met. Then she looked away. I left before they did. A few days later, I found a small box sitting outside my cottage door. Inside was a framed photo, one of the few family pictures we'd taken the year Lily was born. All 4 of us smiling, sunlight spilling through the kitchen window. Tucked behind the frame was a note in Emily's handwriting. "For Lily's sake, I hope you'll join us for Christmas dinner. If not for me, then for her. Emily." I stared at that note for a long while, my emotions a jumble of hope, fear, and caution. Part of me wanted to go, to hold Lily again, to see my son, but another part whispered, "Not yet. Not until it's real." That night, snow began to fall over Willow Creek, soft, quiet, blanketing everything in white. I sat by the fire, the photo in my lap, the note beside it. Mrs. Whitmore had gone to bed early. The whole world seemed to sleep. I whispered into the glow of the fireplace, "Frank, what would you do?" The logs crackled in reply, warm, steady, unhurried. And somehow, in that moment, I felt him there, not in words, but in peace. He'd always believed in second chances. Maybe it was time I did too. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I'd pack a few things, bake my famous apple pie, and go. Not to scold, not to lecture, but simply to be there. Because family, no matter how broken, is still family. And sometimes love isn't about waiting for an apology. Sometimes love is what brings the apology home. You can tell when someone's pride begins to crack. It doesn't happen all at once, not with shouting or tears, but with silence. The kind of silence that settles into the corners of a house like dust no one wants to clean. That was the silence creeping through my son's home that winter. I didn't see it firsthand, not yet. But you don't have to see heartbreak to feel it. Sometimes it moves through the air like weather, and you just know. Winter came down hard on Willow Creek that year. The river froze solid. Snow piled against the roadsides. Even the birds seemed quieter. In my cottage, the fire kept me warm, but my thoughts wandered too often to Michael, Emily, and little Lily. I wondered if their heater still rattled, if the roof still leaked in the corner near the kitchen vent, the one Frank had promised to fix before he passed. I'd given them the house as part of my will, though they didn't know it yet. I'd planned to tell them in the spring. But sometimes life rewrites your plans before you ever get the chance. I found out what was happening from Mrs. Whitmore first. She'd stopped by the grocery store and overheard a few folks talking. In a small town, news travels faster than wind. Maggie, I hate to bring gossip to your doorstep, but I think your son's family's having a rough time. What kind of rough? I asked, setting down my teacup. The kind that makes a woman cry in the bank lobby, she said softly. I froze. Emily? Mrs. Whitmore nodded. Something about missed payments. She left in tears. Folks said she looked worn out, thin, pale, not like herself. I sat there, my mind spinning. Pride had a way of keeping people quiet, especially when they most needed help. Later that week, Michael came by, unannounced, snow on his shoulders, eyes tired. "Mom," he said, voice hoarse, "we're having a hard time." He didn't need to explain. I could see it written all over him. The weight of bills, the sleepless nights, the strain of a marriage trying to survive in silence. He sat down heavily at the table. "Emily's been sick. Stress mostly. The doctor says her blood pressure's through the roof. She barely eats." My chest tightened. "And Lily?" "She's confused, keeps asking where you are. We tried to explain, but she's too little to understand." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Michael, why didn't you tell me sooner?" He swallowed hard. "Emily didn't want me to. Said she couldn't face you, not after everything she said." "It's not about pride, son. It's about family." He nodded, eyes glistening. "She's at her breaking point, Mom. I don't know what to do anymore." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the fire, the flames flickering like old memories, and thought about Emily. Anger? I couldn't find any. Disappointment, maybe. But not hate. Because when you've lived long enough, you learn something important. People don't break because they're bad. They break because they've been holding too much for too long. And when they finally fall apart, it's not judgment they need, it's mercy. It was nearly midnight when I heard it, soft at first, then urgent. 3 knocks. The kind that don't wait. I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and opened the door. There she was. Emily. Her eyes were red, cheeks streaked with tears, hair damp from the snow. She looked smaller somehow, like the storm had worn her down to her truest self. For a long moment, we just stood there. The wind howled around us, the porch light flickering. "Maggie," she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. My throat tightened. "Come inside, dear. It's too cold to stand there." She stepped in, clutching her coat, shivering. I made tea. It was all I knew to do when life got heavy. Boil water, pour warmth into something fragile. Emily sat at the table, eyes distant. Finally, she said, "I know I don't deserve to be here." "Everyone deserves a safe place when they're hurting," I said gently. She shook her head. "I said terrible things. About you. About everything." "I remember," I said softly. Tears welled in her eyes. You were right about everything, Maggie. I thought I could do it all. The house, the job, the baby, the marriage. But I'm drowning. We're behind on bills. I'm scared of losing Lily's preschool spot, and Michael's never home. I've been so stupid. I reached out and placed my hand over hers. You were never stupid, Emily. Just proud, and pride can make even good hearts go blind. She broke then, sobbing into her hands, shoulders shaking. It wasn't the ugly kind of crying. It was the kind that comes when you finally stop pretending you're okay. I just sat with her. No preaching, no scolding, just silence, the kind that feels like grace. When her tears slowed, she whispered, I don't know how to fix everything. You start by not trying to fix it all at once, I said. You start by breathing, by letting people love you again. But after everything I said, then let your actions say something new. She looked up at me, eyes raw and searching. Can I stay here tonight? You can stay as long as you need. That was all it took, that simple promise. When I woke, the house smelled like coffee and buttered toast. Emily was in the kitchen, hair tied back, eyes tired but calm. You still use that same coffee blend, she said with a small smile. Some things don't need changing, I replied. She nodded, almost tearful again. I'd forgotten how peaceful it feels here. That's because peace doesn't make noise, dear. It just waits for you to notice it. We ate breakfast in silence, but it was a good silence this time. A healing one. Over the next few days, Emily stayed at the cottage. She helped around the house, cooked dinner, even joined me at the food pantry. The townsfolk noticed. One lady whispered, "Is that your daughter?" And for the first time in a long while, I smiled and said, "She might as well be." At night, Emily would sit by the fire with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, staring into the flames. "I never realized how much you did for us," she said one evening. "The meals, the laundry, the way you made everything feel steady. I thought it was nothing, but it was everything." That's what love looks like, Emily. It's quiet, easy to miss until it's gone. She nodded, tears glistening again. I don't deserve your forgiveness. You don't have to earn it, I said softly. You just have to accept it. One morning, Emily took a deep breath and called Michael. I could hear the tremble in her voice. "Mike, I'm at your mom's." "I know," he said quietly. "She told me you came by. I need some time. I've been awful to her, to you, to everyone." "Then come home, Em. We'll figure it out." "We can, but only if your mother's part of that home again," she whispered. There was silence on the line, then a soft, "I'd like that too." When she hung up, Emily turned to me. "Would you come home, Maggie? Not just visit, really come home?" I looked out the window. Snow was falling again, quiet, patient, forgiving. "Home isn't where you live, dear," I said. "It's where someone waits for you, and I suppose I've been waiting too." That night, as we sat by the fire, I realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to how things were. It means creating something new from what's left, something stronger, softer. Emily had lost her pride, but she'd found her humility, and I, in my loneliness, had rediscovered my purpose, not as someone's burden, but as someone's anchor. Sometimes the breaking point isn't where life ends, it's where healing begins. The morning Emily and I drove back to the house felt like the first true day of spring. The snow was melting, the air soft with the scent of pine and thawed earth. She was nervous. I could tell by how tightly she gripped the steering wheel. I hadn't said much. I knew some silences don't need filling, they just need time. When the house came into view, I felt my heart twist. It looked tired. The porch steps sagged, the shutters hung loose, and the once bright garden I'd loved was now covered in old leaves. But it was still home, and homes, much like hearts, can be mended if you're willing to get your hands dirty. Michael was standing by the porch when we arrived. He looked older somehow, not by years, but by worry. His eyes met mine, and for a heartbeat, the air between us was thick with everything left unsaid. Then he stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I held him close, the way you hold a child who's still learning the shape of love. "There's nothing to be sorry for, son. We're all just trying to find our way back." Emily stood nearby, her eyes glistening. Michael reached out for her hand. She took it without hesitation. That one gesture, simple, trembling, was the first stitch in a torn family quilt. Then, from the doorway, a small voice shouted, "Grandma!" Lily came running, her pigtails bouncing, her smile as bright as spring sunlight. She crashed into my arms, nearly knocking me backward, and giggled. "Daddy said you were on a long trip. Did you see penguins?" I laughed, tears already spilling down my cheeks. "No penguins, sweetheart, just some very noisy blue jays." She looked up at me with serious eyes. "You can stay now, right? Mommy said you might stay forever." Emily's breath caught. I looked at her, and she nodded faintly, eyes full of quiet hope. "Yes, Lily," I whispered. "I think I'll stay a good long while." The first thing I did was walk out to the backyard. The flower beds were bare, brittle stalks poking through frozen soil. I knelt down, pressing my palm into the earth. "You've been waiting too, haven't you?" I murmured. Emily came out with a spade and a tray of seedlings she'd picked up that morning. "Thought maybe we could plant something together, a new start." The words hung in the air, simple, but full of meaning. We worked in silence, side by side, hands muddy, sleeves rolled up. Every root we pressed into the ground felt like another word of apology, another layer of forgiveness taking hold. Sometimes healing isn't in grand speeches, it's in shared chores, small kindnesses, and time. Lily danced around us, humming off-key, pretending to water the flowers with her little pink watering can. She didn't know she was watering our hearts, too. That evening, Emily made stew, her first home-cooked meal in weeks. She insisted on using my old recipe, the one written in faded ink on a yellowed note card. The smell filled the house, blending with laughter and the clatter of spoons. It was the kind of night that felt almost ordinary, but after months of hurt, ordinary was the most extraordinary feeling of all. Michael raised his glass halfway through dinner. "To family," he said softly, "and second chances." I smiled, feeling warmth bloom in my chest. "To grace," I added, "because without it, none of us would be here." After Lily went to bed, the three of us sat in the living room. The firelight danced across Emily's face. She looked tired, but peaceful. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly, "for letting me back in, for everything." "You don't need to thank me, dear. You've already said what mattered most. You came home." Michael took her hand. "Mom, I know we hurt you. I know I should have stood up sooner." "You were trying to keep the peace," I said, "and sometimes that means standing still when you should speak up. It's a lesson we all learn too late." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Can we make it right?" "You already are," I smiled. one day at a time. Weeks passed, and life found its rhythm again. I helped around the house, but this time Emily didn't take it for granted. We shared chores, recipes, and long walks by the river. When the annual Willow Creek Spring Fair came around, Emily surprised me. "You're coming with us," she said. "No excuses." The fair was small but lovely. Ribbons, lemonade stands, music from a local band. Lily rode the carousel 3 times, waving every time she spun past us. Emily laughed, the sound free and real for the first time in months. I watched her and Michael standing together, hands entwined again, and thought, this is what redemption looks like. Not grand apologies, not big gestures, just steady love, one gentle act at a time. One morning, a few weeks later, I found a letter on my pillow, Emily's handwriting. "Maggie, when I called you dead weight, I thought I was fighting for independence, but what I was really doing was pushing away the one person who carried me when I couldn't walk on my own. You've shown me that strength isn't pride, it's grace. It's showing up, even when someone's hurt you. It's forgiving before you're asked to. Thank you for coming back, for staying, for teaching me how to love again. With love, Emily." I pressed the letter to my heart, tears spilling freely, not tears of pain, but of peace. One morning, I woke early and found Lily in the kitchen, sitting on a stool, drawing with crayons. "What are you making, sweetheart?" "It's us," she said proudly, holding up a picture of 3 smiling figures holding hands under a sun. "Daddy, Mommy, and Grandma." I couldn't speak for a moment. The picture was simple, uneven, full of color, but it was perfect. "It's beautiful, Lily," I whispered. "Just beautiful." She grinned. "Now we're all together again." And in that innocent declaration, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. It takes the pain and turns it into a story worth remembering. From that day forward, things changed. Emily didn't call me Mom out of politeness anymore. She said it with meaning. Michael found laughter again, and little Lily never went to bed without a kiss from all 3 of us. Our home, once cold and distant, was filled again with warmth, not because we rebuilt it perfectly, but because we built it honestly. Sometimes the turning point in life isn't a loud moment, it's quiet. A hand reaching for another, a voice softening, a heart finally learning that love doesn't die when it's hurt. It just waits for the chance to heal. By the time summer arrived in Willow Creek, everything felt softer. The air, the laughter, even the way the light touched the windows of our home. The world had thawed, and so had our hearts. It wasn't a fairy tale, not exactly. We still had hard days, bills to pay, memories that stung, but we faced them together now, like 3 small lights refusing to go out in a storm. And sometimes, that's all family is. Not perfection, just persistence. Every morning I'd wake before sunrise, make coffee, and sit on the porch swing. Emily would join me, wrapped in a blanket, 2 mugs in her hands. We didn't always talk. Sometimes just sharing the quiet was enough. One morning she said softly, "You know, I used to think silence meant distance. Now I think it means peace." I smiled. "Silence is where the heart speaks, dear. We just have to learn to listen." Word travels fast in small towns, faster than sense sometimes, but just as quickly as gossip can spread shame, kindness can rewrite the story. When I first came back to town, people whispered behind my back, wondering if I'd been forced to return or if I'd forgiven my son's wife too easily. But when they saw us together, working at the food pantry, laughing in the churchyard, rebuilding the garden out front, their whispers changed. Mrs. Whitmore stopped me at the farmer's market one day. "Maggie, dear," she said, "you've got half this town talking about forgiveness lately. Emily's been telling everyone how much she's learned from you." "Oh?" I asked, smiling. "Yes," she chuckled. "Said you taught her what grace really means. I told her it takes a rare soul to forgive like that." I just smiled and shrugged. We all get our lessons one way or another. Mine just happened to come wearing kitchen gloves. She laughed, and I realized maybe that was my purpose all along. Not to teach through words, but through the way I lived. Emily started volunteering with me at the church food pantry every Saturday. At first, she was shy, unsure of herself, but the more people she helped, the lighter she became. One afternoon, a young woman came in, clearly embarrassed to ask for help. Emily knelt down beside her, offered her a warm smile, and said gently, "It's okay, honey. Everyone needs a hand sometimes." I watched from across the room, my heart swelling. Months ago, Emily couldn't say those words without pride getting in the way. Now, she said them with pure empathy. It was like watching a flower bloom in slow motion. Afterward, she came to me and said quietly, "You were right, Maggie. Helping others heals you even when you think you're the one doing the saving." "That's the secret," I said with a wink. "Healing's a two-way street." By mid-July, Willow Creek held its annual Midsummer Festival. Music, lemonade, laughter, under fairy lights strung between the oaks. Michael and Emily insisted I come. I tried to decline, said I'd rather stay home with my book, but they wouldn't hear it. "Mom, you're the guest of honor," Michael said, "and that's final." I didn't understand what he meant until I arrived. When I stepped into the town square, everyone turned toward me, clapping. There, on the little wooden stage near the fountain, was a banner. "Community Heart Award, Margaret Walker." My knees nearly gave out. "Oh, heavens," I whispered. "What on earth?" Emily stepped forward, smiling through tears. "This town's better because of you, Maggie, because you never gave up on love. Not when you were hurt, not when you were alone. You taught us that forgiveness can rebuild anything," Michael added, voice thick with emotion. "And because you showed us what family truly means." The crowd cheered softly. I was too stunned to speak. They handed me a small plaque, engraved with words I'll never forget. "For a heart that never stopped giving, even when it was broken." I stood there for a moment, speechless, the summer air warm around me. Then I said, voice trembling, "I don't deserve this. Not really. I just did what love told me to do." The crowd went quiet. "Sometimes we lose our way," I continued, "and we say things we don't mean. But love doesn't vanish. It waits, patient, quiet, for us to come home, and when we do, it welcomes us without question." I looked at Emily then, standing beside Michael, tears streaming down her face. "If this little old heart of mine has done any good," I said softly, "it's only because I was forgiven first, and I'll spend the rest of my days trying to live up to that gift." When I finished, people clapped again, and I saw more than a few handkerchiefs dabbing eyes. A few weeks later, Emily and Lily surprised me again, this time at home. They brought out a large, beautifully wrapped box tied with blue ribbon. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," Lily squealed. Inside was a handmade quilt, soft and colorful, stitched with little embroidered words on each square. Patience, love, forgiveness, family, faith, grace. In the center, in looping thread, it read, "Our home, because of you." I covered my mouth, overwhelmed. "Oh, my stars." Emily hugged me tightly. "You gave us a home, Maggie, not just a roof. You gave us a place where we could fall apart and still be loved. That's something I'll never forget." I hugged her back, my voice trembling. "Then keep it close, dear, because one day you'll need to pass that kind of love down to Lily." She nodded, eyes bright. "I will, I promise." That night, as I tucked the quilt over my lap and sat by the window, I thought about the long road that had led us here, from words that wounded to actions that healed. We weren't perfect, but we were whole. And sometimes that's the greater miracle. I could hear laughter from the kitchen, Emily humming while Michael washed dishes, Lily giggling nearby. The sound filled every corner of the house like sunlight, and I thought, if this is what being dead weight looks like, then let me carry this family forever. Because love, when it's real, never drags you down. It holds you up, quietly, steadily, until you can stand again. People often ask me now, at church, at the market, how I manage to forgive so deeply. I tell them the truth. Because one day, someone will need you to forgive them the way you wish you'd been forgiven. And when that moment comes, you'll understand that mercy isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength of all. If there's one thing I've learned in all my years, it's this. Life has a way of coming full circle. The seeds you plant, kindness, patience, love, they might take years to bloom. But when they finally do, the harvest is worth every storm you endured to keep them alive. And as I sat on the porch that golden autumn evening, a quilt over my knees and a cup of tea in my hands, I saw that truth playing out right in front of me. The air was crisp, the kind that smells like apples and memory. Lily was older now. 6, with wild curls and a voice that carried through the fields. She was chasing a butterfly near the old fence, laughing so hard she nearly tripped over her own shoes. Emily stood on the porch, one hand resting on her belly, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She was expecting again. Michael was raking leaves, whistling the same tune his father used to hum every fall. It struck me then how everything, every mistake, every tear, every apology had led us here. Not to perfection, but to peace. Lily came running to me with a leaf pressed in her tiny hand. "Grandma, look, it's shaped like a heart." I took it gently, holding it up to the fading sunlight. "You know what that means, don't you?" She tilted her head. "What?" "It means love never really falls away. It just changes color with the seasons." She giggled. "You always say pretty things, Grandma." "Well," I smiled, "that's because I've had plenty of time to learn them." Later that evening, we sat around the dinner table, the same one that had once witnessed our worst arguments. Now it was covered in laughter, candlelight, and the smell of cornbread. Emily reached over, placed her hand on mine, and said softly, "I still think about that night I came to your door, Maggie. How easily you could have turned me away." "Oh, Emily," I said with a gentle laugh, "turning you away would have been the easy thing, but easy things don't grow love." Michael nodded, smiling. "You changed everything for us, Mom. You gave us a second chance." I looked around that table, the family I'd almost lost, and whispered, "You gave me one too." Because that's the truth of forgiveness. It doesn't just heal the person who receives it, it heals the one who gives it too. After dinner, Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, can we go see the quilt?" We went into the living room, where the memory quilt hung on the wall. It had faded a little with time, but the words were still clear. Patience, love, forgiveness, family, faith, grace. Lily pointed to the center. I added a new one, she said proudly. There, stitched in uneven letters by small hands, was a new square. Hope. Mommy helped me sew it, she said. She said you taught her that hope is what keeps love alive. My heart swelled. She's right, sweetheart. Hope is what keeps us trying, even after we've been hurt. I touched the little square and felt tears blur my vision. It was perfect. That night, a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling softly in the distance. Emily grew restless. Storms used to frighten her, remind her of chaos and shouting. But this time she didn't hide. She stood by the window beside me, watching the rain trail down the glass. Funny, she said quietly. It used to make me feel trapped. Now it feels cleansing. That's what forgiveness does, dear. It doesn't stop the rain. It just helps you dance in it. She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. You always know what to say. Only because I've lived long enough to be wrong first, I chuckled softly. A few days later, I decided to do something I'd been planning for months. I called Michael and Emily into the living room and handed them an old envelope. What's this? Michael asked. A small gift. For the future. Inside was the deed to the house, the one they thought they'd have to sell years ago when times were hard. I'd transferred it into both their names. Emily's eyes widened. Maggie, no, we can't. You can, I interrupted gently. This house isn't mine anymore. It's ours. It belongs to the love that built it back up. Tears filled her eyes. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of you. I smiled. You already have, dear. The next week, Emily asked me to join her at the community center. She had started leading a small support group for young mothers, women who felt lost, overwhelmed, and alone. I sat quietly in the back as she spoke. When I thought I'd lost everything, she said, voice trembling, someone opened her door to me. She didn't ask for apologies first. She just offered a cup of tea and a place to breathe. She paused, smiling toward me. That act of grace saved my family, and I hope I can offer a little of that same grace to someone else today. I couldn't hold back my tears. She'd taken my pain and turned it into purpose. That's what legacy really is. Not what we leave behind, but what we leave within. Months passed. Seasons turned again, summer into fall, fall into winter. And one evening, as the first snow began to fall outside, I found myself in the rocking chair by the fire, a cup of cocoa in my hands, Lily asleep in my lap. Emily and Michael sat on the couch, their hands intertwined, the quiet warmth of love between them. The house glowed with soft light, the kind that makes you believe everything broken can be whole again. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who stood alone in a cottage, wounded by words she didn't deserve. And I thought of the woman I became, healed, not because time moved on, but because love did. I smiled to myself, whispering, "Full circle, old girl, you made it." Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet, patient, forgiving. A few weeks later, on my birthday, Emily handed me a small box wrapped in gold paper. Inside was a simple silver locket. When I opened it, there were 3 tiny pictures, Michael, Emily, and Lily, all smiling, and behind them, engraved in tiny letters, were the words, "You carried us until we learned to walk again." My hands trembled as I read it. "It's beautiful," I whispered. Emily took my hand. "So are you, Maggie. You were never dead weight. You were the heart." As I sit here now, years later, I know the story isn't just mine. It belongs to every mother who's been cast aside, every woman who's been told she's a burden, and every heart that chose love over pride. If you're listening to this, wherever you are, remember this. Love doesn't fade when it's unappreciated. It just waits, quietly, patiently, until the world is ready to understand it. And when it finally is, that love comes back to you, stronger than ever, carrying a new name. Family.